Welcome to Stop the Fight, episode 39. And today we are discussing last weekend's fights and the Crawford fight this weekend. Let's go!
Don't brag about taking my side piece! Don't brag about taking my side piece, though!
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
He's strong man, good boy, just.
Okay, so last weekend we had Gabriel Rosado and Jamie Munguia along with David Benavidez and Kyron Davis. Now let me start with the Benavidez fight. And some of the things I'm reading online and some of the criticisms of the fight are in fact valid. Now it seems that Benavidez won by knockout, technical knockout in the 7th round. Now, because Kyron Davis didn't get completely blasted out, people are applauding him as though he almost even won. At no point was Benavidez really in trouble, guys. And that's what I told you in the pre-fight. You cannot stop a fighter like Benavidez by having no power. You just can't. You'd have to box the night of your life, and a smaller, shorter guy like Kyron was not going to do it. One who lacked power and couldn't keep Benavidez off him. Even though he was successful in parts, and at point I think he kind of maybe, I don't want to say stunned, but maybe slightly stunned. Let's call it slightly stunned. Lightly stunned Benavidez. It was because Benavidez, similar to Munguia, a fighter we're going to talk about later, doesn't have great defense. They don't. Benavidez does not have a very great defense. I know people are clamoring for Canelo Benavidez, but guys, I'm telling you right now, if Benavidez comes at Canelo with the kind of defense he came in to this fight, he's not going to see the ending of that fight. I know he's big. I know he walks forward, but he's kind of he stands very tall with his head up a lot of the times. Benavidez does. If you look at the way he throws punches, he squares up often, and he'll throw a lot of them, no doubt. But that chin is wide up in the air, and that kind of squared up chin in the air, throwing like 3-4 punches at a time, is what gets you countered and knocked out. It's also what got him lightly stunned by Kyron Davis in this fight. Now, again, I'm hearing rumors that it could be a weight issue. Benavidez just can't really make 168 anymore. Although, he came in a little bit under the limit. He had about a quarter pound left. I think he came in 167 3/4. So, again, I don't want, people are giving Kyron Davis a little too much credit. I love a good underdog. I do. But it was, sometimes the physics of the fight don't make sense. And a power puncher, a big, strong power puncher against a boxer who has little or not a lot of power is always a disaster for the boxer. He has to basically fight perfectly for 12 rounds. It's almost not possible. And almost all the time, so I didn't bet on this fight. So I told you guys, I didn't know when it was going to end, but this is why I stayed away from a fight like this. Is that the winner is too clearly, obviously, going to be David Benavidez. Does he get the stoppage? When does he get the stoppage? All those things are up in the air. Again, I do bet over under, but I don't like to do so. It's something. It's something that I do when the casino just doesn't leave you any way. And this is why, like, some people say if you're gambling all the time, long term, you're either losing or, best case scenario, you're kind of breaking even. When and this is true, guys. I've done this for a little bit of time now. You have basically streaks. It seems like it. And I think this is true. I don't want to talk about cryptocurrency too much, but much like with cryptocurrency, you want to have, if you spread out your bets every week, you do a little bit here or there. You're kind of always breaking even if you're pretty good. Like, let's say I consider myself relatively decent. I follow the fight game. I know a little bit about boxing. So I'm not a completely just uneducated, let's call him normie who doesn't know what he's talking about entirely. You may say I don't know what I'm talking about, but surely I have a little bit more understanding of the game than your average person on the street. So I believe I have a little bit more knowledge of when I call fights. And with this one, it was obvious that Kyron Davis, I don't care what level of underdog he was, he had no chance against Benavidez. Just no chance. 1 in 1,000. The odds weren't giving you that. I think they were giving you like 10-1 odds, right? Plus 1,000, something like that. So, and I can't see him winning in 10 fights, not one fight. No, I just couldn't. It just the structural, physical, the angles don't make sense for him. So back to betting, you want to have, again, not financial advice. This is just what I do and how I'm just thinking out loud to myself. You want to have few, but very, very kind of dedicated plays. So do you guys remember how I was just completely sure of the pick by Nonito Donaire versus I forgot his name now, but it was an entirely a disaster. It was just obviously a disaster of a fight for the other fighter, and like that was I put a little bit, thankfully, it was nice, but you want to concentrate your bets in places where you are very, very, very sure, and really kind of make that the cornerstone of your, or myself, make that the cornerstone of my betting portfolio. Rather, every week come in there and hope you can outsmart the casino, and you're playing all these value odds bets. Like, I made it absolutely clear that while I thought Canelo was going to win the fight with Plant, I'm putting a little bit of money on Plant simply because I believe they stretched the odds too wide. I believe I was kind of justified. I got him a plus 650. That fight was, could have even been even before the stoppage. I actually had, I think it was even. Again, I haven't rewatched the fight. I haven't looked at my card. I had it either even or 6-4 Canelo. Well, the whole point is it didn't look like a plus 650 fight up until the stoppage. It really didn't. And I was going to say the same thing with Kovalev. I took Kovalev against Canelo. There, I really thought he was going to win. I was actually, thankfully, I didn't put too much cash, but I was very sure that Kovalev would win, even in a depleted state. And going into the 11th round, that fight was even. It was a coin flip. So you got to take these kind of value bets. You're sure about a certain bet, you take it. The under in not the under, the Hellenius in the rematch, right? Like, some things just become versus Kalinowski. Some things become very, very obvious to you when you see them. There's almost no way that the like, you can just tell. You just know. Once Hellenius got Kalinowski out there the first time, which I had money on Hellenius the first time too. I wish I've had more. But the second time it was no brainer. It was no brainer. Kalinowski knows how to fight one way, with his face up in the air, going forward, throwing shots, against the guy who throws straight shots with longer hands, who will fight off his back foot. And not only that, but what's his name? Hellenius can even throw an uppercut and a hook here and there. Not only straight shots, but basically it was obvious. Some fights, and I think I have to tell myself, we always evolve, we always learn. This is true in stocks sometimes. This is true in crypto, and this is true here. It is better to have conviction bets, bigger conviction bets, than just spreading your stuff all around. Like, yes, if I bet on every fight all the time, I'll probably win a good portion of fights here and there. But the amount that I'm losing, I'll wind up barely breaking even, if that. And sometimes you get a bad draw and you just get wiped out on a card. That's happened to me. Happened to me actually the other month. I was wrong on every single bet. I was actually the Lomachenko with Gervonta Davis that night. I was wrong on every bet that night. Every single one of them. And that's what happens. Rather than taking conviction plays, you kind of spread them out, trying to figure out every single one. And, that's what happens to you. So, again, I didn't bet on this fight, and I'm happy I didn't. I don't even remember what the under was, over under. But let's move on. David Benavidez wins, obviously. He's undefeated. He's 25-0 with 22 knockouts. Now, again, the resume leaves much to be desired, and there is enough holes. I mean, he's 24, he's young, but there are enough holes in his game, and he gets hit enough that if he goes up to 175, where he's no longer that big, he's sizable for super middleweight, but he will not be sizable for light heavy. He will not be sizable, so he needs to stay down here. If he gets I'm calling it right now. If he gets forced into light heavyweight, this is a problem for him. David Benavidez will, in his current state, I think Bivol has shown that he's just too small, but I think Bivol could probably box circles around him. Well, circles is not giving enough credit to Benavidez, but I believe he will be able to outbox Benavidez over 12. But Beterbiev I would think, almost certainly stop Benavidez, or Beterbiev, or however you want to pronounce him. will almost certainly stop Benavidez if he comes up to light heavyweight. Joe Smith absolutely stops him. I would take that in a heartbeat. In a heartbeat. If they make a Joe Smith versus Benavidez fight at light heavy, if he moves up, taking Joe Smith all day long. Ramirez, Gilberto Ramirez. Talk about another up and coming fighter, but this is, this guy is legit, Zurdo. Very, very legit. Obviously recently got out. Sullivan Barrera, good fighter, good fighter. I think he'll be a better fighter than Benavidez at 175. You have obviously Vlasov now. Again, I don't know. For me, it's still the jury's still out on Vlasov because he fought well. He fought very well against Joe Smith, but not well enough to win. I don't know if he has the pop. Again, Joe Smith just has an iron chin, but I don't know if he has the pop. There's obviously Callum Smith at light heavyweight now that he's moved up. It's a good division. Marcus Brown, Badu Jack. Obviously, what's his name just got suspended. Jean Pascal. I like Jean Pascal. I know he's not a favorite, but I like him. And obviously, you have Buatsi. Excuse me, right? This is a division. I just named you guys, and I think he beats Badu Jack. Maybe Vlasov, but everybody else, nope. Buatsi, nope. I think he barely cracks the top 10 in his current form. Maybe. So that's what I got to say about Benavidez. I think he's better off staying at 168 and hoping for that Canelo fight. We do have some Canelo news. We'll talk about it. Let's talk about the Munguia fight because, again, you guys know I took Gabriel Rosado, and you guys know I took the under, so I got blown out on this bet. That's okay, but it happens. You have to prepare for these kind of nights. I told you that if Munguia stops him later, wins a decision, I lose both ends of the bet. Sorry about that, guys. I lose both ends of the bet. And this was a very exciting fight. Let me tell you, this was a very exciting fight. It showcased the strength and weaknesses of both fighters throughout all 12 rounds of action. Gabe Rosado has now been through a lot of wars. He's fought a lot of fighters. He's been through a lot of wars. Let me quickly just give you some of the names that Gabe Rosado has indeed fought. Obviously he's fought Soto Karass, right? Golovkin, Love, Killen, Charlo, Lemieux, Clottey, Monroe Jr., Martin Murray, Glenn Tapia, Suzlecki, what's his name? Then he has the little revival with Daniel Jacobs, and now Bully, and now he fights. He goes all 12 grueling rounds against Jamie Munguia. Now, I've been hearing that this fight was close, guys. This fight was not close, but it was competitive. What does it mean? Every single round, Rosado did something. But I did not think Rosado won more than 3 rounds. So I'm hearing stuff like, oh, Rosado, the scorecard should have been closer. Look, you guys know every single time Rosado fights, I'm always picking Rosado. I've been saying this. I've been saying it for a few fights now. I like the fighter a lot. I do not make this a secret. This is a well-known fact. I am partial towards Rosado. I like the way he fights. I like what he does in the ring. I like his workmanlike career, but he was not close on the scorecards in this fight. He won a few of the early rounds and maybe he won a round somewhere in the middle, but the rest of the rounds, while he had moments in all of them, and he did, he was just outlanded severely and took the significantly more punishment than Munguia did. Now, Munguia is our undefeated fighter. You know what's crazy about Munguia? Sometimes I forget that he's 25 years old, but has already 38 fights, 30 knockouts. That's a lot. He's also a taller guy, by the way. 6 foot. These guys are sizable middleweights. At super middleweight, this is just to give you an example. Benavidez is the same height as Munguia. They both have. I think Benavidez is a slightly better boxer, but Munguia's offense is, I think, better than Benavidez's. I'll be frank here. Munguia was throwing very hellacious combinations on Rosado, and it was something to see. Rosado showed, as he always does, a tremendous chin. You would think that they would start cracking. I think eventually it will if he takes these kind of fights and he fights like this. But he took a lot of shots and he took them well. He kept going. The kid is heavy-handed. He's obviously not Golovkin heavy because, well, it seemed like Golovkin was, and this was a much younger Rosado, was really putting it on Rosado, and like Rosado's face looked like it was been through a meat grinder. I mean, his trainer at the time, I don't know if it's still the same guy. I don't think it is, but his trainer at the time was screaming how he had to throw in the towel because he believed Rosado was gonna die. It was a brutal fight, that Golovkin fight. It was really kind of, for me, the coming out party for Golovkin. How he was able to brutalize Rosado. Golovkin, of course, then goes on to have a very, very legit run at middleweight. I would say maybe even one of the better runs historically at middleweight. He did have. But Rosado, for everything that Rosado does well, he doesn't do it well enough. He's got some pop, but not enough. He's a good boxer, but not good enough. He's got some speed, but not enough. And he's sometimes, when he wants to be, he's good on defense, but he's one of those fighters. He's one of those fighters that we talked about it. Well, not we, but my trainer back when I used to train used to always harp on this. He goes, just like, you have to be able to switch or use both at the same time, your offense and your defense. Many fighters and most fighters, like most, first of all, like non-championship level fighters are like this. They will generally have an offensive mode and then a defensive mode. And when you are in one mode, you're basically not functioning in the other. So Rosado goes on the attack and he completely forgets about his defense and therefore eats a million shots when Munguia throws first. Conversely, Rosado will go on the defense and will slip a lot of shots, but will throw absolutely no counters and will not switch to the attack until they've already reset, and his entire defensive maneuver, his slipping, his feinting, his getting into the right angle has been nullified by them kind of hopping around and restarting the fight. And when you have this kind of a dynamic, this kind of fighting dynamic, this kind of like a fighting style, which very many fighters do. Again, this is what separates the pretty good fighters from the very good and elite fighters. The elite, you see with Canelo, he's able to very quickly switch from defense. It's almost in the middle of the game. Like, it's part of his game. Floyd is very similar that way. Floyd would hurt you even when you're on the attack all the time because he knew how to. It's not just countering, guys. This is different than just countering. This is the ability to slip a shot, counter, and get into offensive position, maybe throw another one. So Floyd's prime example would be to slip a shot. It would be slip a shot, throw a right hand, hit you, and then slip the oncoming overhand right. That kind of like defense attack defense in a three-punch combination is. That's difficult to do. Everyone trains for that, but to naturally get that on, and then sometimes he'll do that into a grab and a couple of inside shots, and that kind of instant kind of fluidity from defense to offense is. I don't even know if it can. I'm sure it can be taught, obviously, right? But some fighters just do it very naturally, and I just spoke about Golovkin. He doesn't have this kind of strength, but he's always at least defensively cautious. He's not like Canelo. He's not as fluid with it. He's obviously a better offensive fighter, I believe, in his prime, not now. In his prime, better offensive fighter, and he also, I think, he has better footwork than Canelo. Canelo's oftentimes stationary and using his upper body for his defense. Golovkin does more of like uses the angles and his footwork to set you up into bad position. But this is not about Golovkin. It's about Rosado and Munguia. So with Munguia. 25 years old, he looks good, no doubt. But, I mean, good, relatively. He's offensively gifted. And I know they got Eric Morales in that corner kind of leading the charge. Forget about defense. This kid's never going to be a defensive master, defensive wizard. We're just going to go out there and have just this offensive firepower. And I think at 160, he can do it, Munguia. He can be that guy. He can be the guy who's throwing a lot, can eat the shots. While he's 25, he probably has another 5-6 years of just like probably eating the shots that he ate it with Rosado, as long as they match him properly. Don't get, like if you're going to take Golovkin, I would say give it at least another half year to a year before you take him. See what Golovkin looks like in December before you agree to that fight, because in his current state, Munguia, eating as many shots as he does, he's going to walk into a Gennady Golovkin overhand, because that's the shot. I mean, they were talking about this fight. Why am I bringing Gennady Golovkin up? They were talking about this fight. He's going to walk into overhand rights, and he'll get put down on his ass. I know one of the things he was doing was really twisting with Rosado's shots, like whiplashing his head to kind of take off some of the sting. That works until it doesn't. So I'll say just that much. You know, he's going to eat some shots against Golovkin. If Golovkin is anywhere close to his 2000, even 2018 form, I would be, if I were Munguia, I would not take this fight just yet. I would give it, let's see how he does. If the December fight is grueling for him, if it's one of those like 12 or like late round KO that takes a while and Golovkin's marked up, he's ripe. He's ripe. I'll argue he's already ripe, but like if you're Munguia's handlers, you want a name like Golovkin on your resume, but you want to be sure you get that name, you get that scalp. So that's so I'm talking about regarding Munguia and Rosado. Again, Rosado may want to consider what he wants to do with his career, because the punishment at 35 is now adding up. Now, the fight this weekend, there's actually two. Well, I'm not going to talk about one. You have Quigley versus Andrade. Demetrius Andrade. Now, Demetrius Andrade, again, I feel bad for him. His career can't go anywhere. It's not going anywhere. Not that it can't go anywhere. It's just not going anywhere. He can't get the fights. Is Quigley going to be the fight? Not, it won't. Like, I mean, it's a nice name to have, but Americans are like, who? What? Like, this is literally who? They don't know British fighters. They don't know. Speaking of British fighters, Kiko Martinez got the upset over Galahad, while I remember, guys. So I'm telling you about British fighters. There's a curse. There's a curse. They step up on a world level, and they don't do it. I don't know what happens, guys. I don't know what happened. He's a British fighter, stepped up to the world level, and he got chopped right back down. I think you know what it is? Because we're an Anglophone media, we hear a lot, and obviously watch The Zone. We hear a lot about British fighters. I think we really overrate them. I think a lot of fighters we genuinely overrate because we have exposure to them. Now let's talk about this weekend. Let's talk about Terrence Crawford against Sean Showtime Porter. Bud Crawford, by the way. Bud's nickname is going to call him Bud. This is, better late than never, I guess, when it comes to Crawford, but this is still not quite it. It's not so much that Sean Porter is a bad fight for Crawford. It's that people want him to fight somebody. It's tough, since he's moved up to 147, Jeff Horn, Benavidez Jr., Amir Khan, Goliakis, and Kell Brook. That's a 3-year stretch of fights that are in a division with like Danny Garcia and obviously Earl Spence Jr., Manny Pacquiao, Keith Thurman. You finally get to a Sean Porter 3 years later. Bud is, I keep saying it, he's a pound-for-pound number one talent. But his resume, you can't even have him in the top 3 right now. How can you possibly have Bud, with what he's done in the past 4 years, ahead of Canelo, ahead of Inoue, ahead of even Teofimo, ahead of Usyk? How can you possibly have him ahead of those fighters? You can't. You just can't. You just can't. Yes, the Manny Pacquiao fight, in hindsight, he would have won that fight, but that would have given him a big name. But right now, I just can't even have him in the top 3. He may be out of the top 5. I know people are looking at me like I'm crazy, but he may be out of the top 5 in terms of pound-for-pound lists. So, let's take a look at the pound-for-pound list. Alvarez, right? You could argue Tyson Fury, but I don't think so. Usyk, right? Spence is higher than him. We're talking about, Inoue, of course. We're talking about fighters that, all deserve to be ahead of him. It's strictly speaking based on resume. Anyone looking can tell you based on skill and talent, he's up there. But we don't base it on that. We base it on what you've achieved. One of the great things about Roy Jones, he's both achieved and he visually passed the eye test. So let's talk about the actual fight. This is a little bit more interesting than I think people are giving credit for. Sean Porter, yes, the defeated Sean Porter, the 3 defeat Sean Porter. You know, the one who lost to Cal Brook, the one who lost to Keith Thurman, the one who lost to Earl Spence, but was competitive with all of them. He was competitive with all of them. I think Cal Brook was a little wide, I'll be honest. But he was competitive in all those fights. You know, he's beating Danny Garcia, Ugas. You know, like he's a very good fighter, Sean Porter. But one of the things he does, let me tell you, he sits on you. He makes you uncomfortable. Now, Terrence likes to fight. We've seen him. He likes to get angry and he likes to fight, especially when he gets pressed up on. But we've also seen Terrence now wobbled. Crawford gets wobbled. We've seen it. Even Cal Brook landed a few shots there, did he not? This much smaller 2020 Cal Brook, not the 2012 Cal Brook, 2013 Cal Brook, 2014 Cal Brook, 2020 Cal Brook. Kavaliauskas, who's actually turning out to be a much better fighter than maybe I gave him credit for initially, but he knocked him down. He knocked Bud Crawford down. He hurt him a little bit. He knocked him down. He roughed him up at points. Yes, Bud came back and won, but as you go into your mid-30s, this is harder and harder to do. So what you have here is a southpaw. A southpaw and Crawford running into Sean Porter. Now, let me tell you how this can end up poorly for Sean Porter. Sean Porter likes to lunge, and this kind of like jumping in onto a southpaw, that he may land himself right into a straight left hand. He will. And if that happens and he's knocked out relatively early on because he just jumped into the wrong shot, will I be surprised? No. No, I will not be surprised. Terrence, like I said, Terrence Crawford can't do any of those things. But at the same time, Sean Porter can push Terrence Crawford, put him on the ropes and make this fight really ugly. And I mean really ugly. Then I think there's a little bit of a all bets are off type of a deal that goes on with this. I do. I'm getting it. You're saying, like, am I picking, what's his name? Am I picking Sean Porter to beat Terrence Crawford? No, I'm absolutely not doing that. And Sean Porter is going at a plus 500. Also, Sean Porter's never been stopped. He's going at plus 500. The under 10.5 is plus 205. Yeah, you hear that? Plus 205. This is one of those fights where I'm obviously betting. Me. But what's the right call here? What's the right call here? I don't think... Do we take the under 10.5? Do we do a similar bet as before? We take Sean Porter outright and the under 10.5. Thinking that, he may launch himself into a straight left hook and just the fight's over. Terrence has got pop. Absolutely. 27-0 with 28 knockouts. 37-0 with 28 knockouts. 75% KO ratio. Can maybe Sean Porter smother him? Does that 10.5 make sense? I mean, that's the midway through the 11th round. That's pretty much the whole fight. Basically, the way I'm thinking about setting up my bet is, does somebody win by knockout? And can Sean Porter pull it off? If somebody wins by knockout, they're paying you 3-1. That means you bet 100, you win. You get paid out 300. You're 100 plus 200 on top. So that's plus 200. And do we see that happening? I mean, again, I don't like this bet. The odds are too wide. I was thinking about taking. Sometimes you just take the what do you call them? Not the under, the overdog. You take the favorite, outright. And even when you get odds such as like 5-1 against, you bet 500 to win 20, let's say, 500 to win 100. That's reasonable, right? So I know there were people that were putting down 10 grand on Mayweather fights to win like $1,000. Why? It seems crazy, right? But because when Mayweather is an automatic W, you almost don't care as long as you have the capital. Do you understand what I'm saying? So they're paying you 10%, basically, night in and night out. And I know in the UFC, Amanda Nunes, someone put $100,000 to win, like, I think it was like $5,000 or something like that, or was it like 10 grand or something like that? And they did it, and everyone was like, "Wow, that's crazy. That was stupid." Was it? Not when you're just dominating everybody outright, and your chances of losing are practically non-existent. Now, of course, it seems like you're such an idiot. Why would you bet $100,000 to only win 10 grand? You know, if you're on the stock market and someone says you get 10% returns this year, you're gonna make that's not bad at all. You know what I'm saying? Well, okay, these years it's a little bit crazy these past 2 years, but generally speaking, you're gonna make it's really not bad. The stock market averages like 8%. You know, getting your 10% to 2% more than the stock market shit is 25% better than average returns. So you guys have to. A lot of times we always are looking at these odds. Oh, how do I triple, quadruple my money? Sometimes that's not always the case. Sometimes you just want to, win a certain something. You know, you see Terrence Crawford at plus 5. If Terrence Crawford was minus 500, I probably would have put out like, maybe upwards of like $1,000 would be a reasonable bet to put on Terrence Crawford. That's how confident I am in winning. But I'm forced to structure the bet otherwise because I'm not gonna, first of all, Terrence Crawford is at minus 700, starting to get too high for me. I have to put down a lot to see anything. I have to put down $1.5 grand, and I'm not that kind of bettor. I made it very clear this is like a beer money channel. $50, $100, $200 at most, really. I'm not betting $200 to win like $30 or whatever it is they're gonna pay me. $40, not even 40 maybe. For taking Terrence Crawford, you put up $200. You may as well put that money in more evenly spread odds that you can put on a hockey game or something like that. Again, none of this financial advice, but that's kind of what we're kind of dealing with. The casino's not stupid. Sometimes they're wrong, and this is what I mean by kind of go in on those, save your money, build up your capital, and when you see the casinos either horribly mispriced some, take that value bet, take that kind of odds bet, or, wait until the casino's really messed up and maybe they don't know something. And sometimes that happens in fight sports. They don't know something. Like with Hellenius or with the messed up odds. Remember, I think we got Daenerys plus 200 for that fight, which is insane. Absolutely insane. Anyway, guys, that's going to do it for me. I'll see you guys next Thursday. It's over.
I'm going to go home and break my wife's hip.
Don't brag about taking my side piece. Don't brag about taking my side piece, though.
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
He's strong man, good boy, just